Monday, September 28th, Burnsville Planning Commission meeting. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The first item on this evening's agenda is the adoption of the agenda. And does the commissioners have any changes to the posted agenda?
None.
None?
I'm sure.
None from commissioners. Staff, do you have any changes?
None from staff.
With that being said, I would stand for a motion for adoption.
So moved.
So moved. Moved by Commissioner Benke.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Workman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed say nay. And the motion carries. The second item in this evening's agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 24th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, do you have any adjustment or changes to the minutes that were provided in our background?
Sure.
Commissioner Benke.
Oh, just the observation that we did discuss the, how was it that we phrased it for the items that we were re-seeing? I believe it was we weren't reconfirming. We were actually confirming them. I did see that it still says that, and I guess if that's how staff wants to include it, that's fine.
Okay.
But I just wanted to acknowledge that we had talked about that.
Commissioner Benke, anything else?
Nope.
No. Staff, any changes to the minutes?
No changes from staff.
With those noted changes, I would stand for a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Commissioner Singh.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Workman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay, and the motion carries. The third item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing. Danae's Summit at Buck Hill LLC has submitted an application for a preliminary and final plat to be known as Summit at Buck Hill 3rd Edition and a PUD amendment for a townhouse development located at 15200 Burnhaven Drive. And before we discuss this, Commissioner Benke, I will give you the floor.
Thank you. This is the company I work for, so I'll be recusing myself from all deliberations and abstaining from all votes.
Thank you. He'll be stepping away from the dais, and then we'll have him back. With that being said, Mr. Slania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this is a public hearing. This is a project for a townhome development, 32 units in total. The approvals for this come in a number of steps. The first is preliminary and final plat approval to subdivide the property. That includes the 32 townhome units and the common area to be owned by the association. There's also a planned unit development amendment required with this. The subject site, which you see here, is 4.18 acres. The property is zoned R3B, which is the city's highest density residential district. It is also zoned or designated in the comprehensive plan as high density residential. The zoning allows for up to 14 units an acre per density within the R3B. The applicant is proposing 7.6 units an acre, so well within the maximum limits allowed within the zoning district. I'll get into a brief history in a second, but here is an aerial photo of the site. You can see it is an odd-shaped site with the Burnhaven and Greenhaven Drive curve around the site. There are apartments to the west, and we have townhomes to the east, as well as high-density condominiums to the west, or co-ops to the west, to the east also. The history on this, the property owner, Danae's Summit at Buck Hill LLC, has owned the property since 2006. Danae developed the townhomes that are in this area, as well as some that are off the page. I believe there were 67, give or take, in that development. With that, they were looking to expand a second phase and looked at this property. The northern parcel, which is 2 acres in size, was owned by the city. The southern parcel came with the purchase of this land for the initial townhome development. So Don A. already owned that. Through a purchase agreement with the city, they purchased this. Every intent was to combine the parcels and development for future use. Initially, it was going to be townhomes. With changes in the market and so forth, the last proposal for this site was 2009. At that time, the property owner had proposed 70 units of memory care facility. It was 56,000 square feet in total. Again, the applicant did not proceed with that. There were extensions granted, and in the end, property owner decided to let those extensions go. The plat is now null and void. The planned unit development approval for that was granted. It did receive full approval, so it is a PUD. Actually, both parcels exist as a PUD, but that did not move forward. There's been no activity on the site since, so the proposal in front of the Planning Commission is an amendment to that original PUD and also the plat. From a PUD standpoint, we look at the benefits and the deviations with each application. The benefits here, staff sees these units as high-quality, owner-occupied units. We're hearing from a number of people that they're looking to move into Burnsville. They're looking at a different variety of homes, not necessarily single-family homes, but all varieties of homes for the life cycle housing, if you will. And the other townhome projects have also been successful in recent times. Staff is supportive of this. The design, not only the site plan, but also the architectural design is high quality and will be an asset to the neighborhood and to the city. There are 2 deviations being requested. One is, let me jump. I'll use this image. I apologize for flipping this around, but it fits better on the screen this way. To the left is north, so this is the north end of the site. This is the south end of the site. The adjacent apartments are just over here. The first deviation is the setback from a collector street. For any building is required to be set back 50 feet from the property line of a collector street. All of these units, or the minimum setback, is 40 feet. Basically, this is a carryover from the 2009 approval. Due to the odd shape of the lot and the adjacent street frontage, there is less buildable area than a rectangle or a squared lot that may have streets on 2 sides. This has streets on all but one side, if you look at it that way. Both Greenhaven and Burnhaven are collectors as designated by the comprehensive plan and our traffic management plan. They don't necessarily operate as collectors right now. They are not at full capacity by any means, but they also have a larger than normal right-of-way. So when we look at the setbacks for these units, you'll notice they are not going to be, you're not going to notice that they are right up against the curb. There is still a significant setback between the curb of the street and the property line, as well as from the property line is the 40 feet to the edge of the units. So there are, the exterior units are the areas where the setback comes into play. 19, 20, 23, 30, 32, and unit number 1 over here. The second deviation requested by the applicant is the reduction between the units. You'll notice in this area, units 1 and 2, this is one building by building code. It is one building. there is 15 feet between this and the adjacent unit. The ordinance requires in this zoning district 20 feet between those. Again, this is a deviation that was approved in 2006 with the Donne approval across the street with the other townhomes. Again, the ability to cluster the buildings together provides the ability for better green space, a more collective green space area by reducing the setbacks. So all the setback between the buildings here, and throughout is 15 feet rather than 20 feet. Staff finds these deviations to be very reasonable. They are not a detriment to the site or to the neighborhood in any way. They provide for a better end product with the design. The applicant satisfies the green space in this zoning district. 50% of the site is required to be green, landscaped area. The applicant's proposing 57.2%. The applicant is also proposing guest parking stalls in areas throughout the site. Just starting from north to south, there's a cluster here, up here, and then some down here. The ordinance requires 1/2 parking stall per unit. And we've calculated 16 required, and the applicant has provided 16 guest parking stalls. Also discussing parking, the applicant has done a nice job of providing deeper driveways. Not only do the units themselves provide for a 2-stall garage, but the driveways have a minimum length or depth, if you would, of 22 feet. So a larger vehicle, a pickup truck or something like that, can fit in the driveway without overhanging into the street. These are public streets, these are private streets, not public. But staff sees that as a benefit also to be able to fit a larger vehicle or possibly a trailer, something like that, without it hanging over into the private street. In addition to the guest parking, I also wanted to touch on the circulation quickly while we're using this site plan. There are 2 access points, one on the north end off of Burnhaven, one on the south end off of Greenhaven Drive. There is only one exit point from the development, and that would be moving north out to Burnhaven at this point. We'll get into the traffic and the circulation in a little bit, but I wanted to point that out while it's clear on this image before we get into some of the other designs. So here's the landscape plan. Again, that satisfies the ordinance requirements for number of plantings, the differentiation within the plantings and the percentages used. This was also something reviewed by staff, specifically our engineering staff, to make sure we have good visibility at the access points. Here's the grading plan for the site. I believe I touched on in the report there are some tiered retaining walls up in this area. Both of them are in the 4-foot range for a total of 8 feet by the time you put the 2 tiers together. Otherwise, the rest of the development can be done at grade, so we're not dealing with substantial retaining walls or anything like that in the area. And again, here is the plat. So you'll notice 32 total lots, residential lots, and then lot 33 will be the common area for the development, although it does not seem well connected to the rest of the development based on the shape. There is this long area on the north end that is still part of the subject site. There are still trees and vegetation that are there that will remain untouched moving ahead. speaking of vegetation, I did want to touch on the tree preservation and the reforestation. The site was cleared in 2006 as part of the phase across the street. There was substantial grading, tree removal done at that time. That reforestation was taken care of as part of the 2006 development, the first phase for Donna. So all the required trees that were to go in were put in with that development. This site, as you noticed, is relatively vacant in this area. There is some tree and vegetation up here. Some of this will also get removed at this time. As you notice, there was retaining walls in this area. So there is a little bit of tree removal occurring here. There is required reforestation, but the applicant is exceeding that number substantially. I believe the report indicated $3,600 required to be replaced, and based on the proposed plan, the applicant is putting $32,000 back into the site. So again, well designed and landscape to satisfy both the residents and the neighbors in the area. We'll jump to the elevations for the site. This is very similar to what you'll see across the street. The units are 3 or 4 bedrooms depending on the specific unit and location within development. Each have a 2-car garage and each have 3 bathrooms. We are looking at an all vinyl exterior. We've discussed the materials in the past, specifically the heart of the city. We spent a lot of time discussing the materials and the style, the quality, etc. The development across the street is also all vinyl. It is similar to this. Hopefully the commission can see this, but these are images, color photos of what the applicant is proposing. You can see the color palette right there. There is a substantial amount of character and deviation within this. There's vinyl lap siding, there's board and batten siding, there's brick and stonework around the base and around the garage doors. There are shakes also within this. There's changes in the depth of each elevation also with the front porches, the covered porches and things like that. It does give much better depth, 3-dimensional depth than what you're seeing in this black and white elevation. Here's another style of unit that you'll see going into the site. Again, this is images from across the street that the applicant is planning to use at the subject site. Staff went through the review with the applicant. Staff is satisfied. Again, both the Planning Commission and the Council in 2006 spent quite a bit of time on the exterior design, and that has turned out very well. Staff supportive of what's being proposed here. Some of the same images that you saw on the board here. This is the back of units. Again, you'll see vinyl shakes, board and batten siding. Again, differentiation not only horizontally but vertically as required by the ordinance. The proposal satisfies the R3B zoning district requirements except for the 2 deviations listed. Staff finds both of those to be reasonable. Again, a quality product, a quality home owner-occupied product. Staff supportive of that and recommends approval of the Planning Commission with the two conditions. The first has been discussed with the applicant, is more of a paperwork issue. There is an easement running through would be the west side of the property. There will be some grading work that occurs in there, and we want to make sure the benefit of that easement is aware. And the second one is more of a house cleaning up our files, because the 2009 approval, the plat was never filed, that never moved ahead. This amendment would replace that and essentially clean some things up for our planning files. Commissioners, I did not get into the traffic and the circulation, but we came part of your questions. I know Mr. Hillgardner's up to speed on that and can speak to that as well. The property owner, Paul Donnet, is here if the commissioners have any questions for the applicant, and I'll stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. I appreciate your time. Very thorough background. Commissioners, questions?
A quick
Commissioner Workman.
And maybe this is for the property owner, but on the north point that's yet to be developed or that will be left undeveloped, is there any plans as far as, is that just going to be growth, or is there landscaping plans for that area?
Certainly. Let me jump to that image. I'll bring it up on the aerial photo. I'll let the applicant speak to this, but I believe much of it is also within that easement. As the easement runs the length of the site, I don't know that there's much available there.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions for me, too?
Commissioner Singh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slaney, according to the background information provided to us, the applicant has met all city standards for this project. We need the PUD amendment because there are two deviations. Both were previously approved. The setbacks towards Burnhaven and Greenhaven from 50 feet to 40 was approved in 2006 in the former plan, and the setback between the buildings from 20 to 15 feet was approved in 2006. Am I right?
That is correct, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Although that deviation was not approved for this site, it was approved for the adjacent townhome site with the same property owner.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions I have.
Chris, just for clarification, because we've struggled with some vinyl siding stuff and presentation in the back. The units, like specifically 32, 31, it'd be 28, 29, 30, 31, does have some exposure back to Burnhaven, and to a certain extent some exposure on 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. The back of the units across the street that are not visible at all are one consistent vinyl siding. Is there any, from the plans, and I may have missed it, is there any deviation to some of the back of specifically that building?
Not that staff is aware of at this time.
By deviation, I'm sorry, we're not, I used the wrong terminology, just change in
Variation.
Variation in the siding.
Certainly.
I'm sorry.
Not that staff is aware of. The developer would have the ability, certainly prior to building permit or something like that. On the original phase, there was alternating units that had not only decks but enclosed porches off the back, just to give it some variation. Right now, I don't know that they're at that detail, but we can certainly discuss that with them to alternate some of the porch or deck options that would be off the back.
Okay, thanks. Commissioners, any other questions before we ask the applicant to come up? Any questions of staff? No. Can we have the applicant come up?
Absolutely. Just arrow up and back, that gets you through all the slides.
Okay.
And thank you. You bet.
Good evening, thanks for coming this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members, or planning commission members, I should say. Any questions?
I asked the question about, I would start off with, I would like to be very complimentary of the development you've completed across the street, actually. In some of our other applications, we've used your property as an example of what can be done to not have a massive wall of beige siding. So thank you very much. And I also want to thank you for bringing the application to us in front of Burnsville. We appreciate you developing in Burnsville. I know that was, I live in the area, I know that was a challenging lot. There was a severe slope there and a tremendous amount of fill that was brought in to make that a buildable lot. So, and I just, my question was, and some of those buildings have a fair amount of visibility where I realize 1 through 19 don't have much from the street. I just didn't know if there was, and I wasn't asking for like what you did on the back of the properties on Greenhaven. I know you had back porches and different things, but was there any variation planned there at all to try to make that not be a kind of a beige wall of vinyl siding?
Yeah, I think we can enhance that with like you said, the porches, and because we offer those, they're an option, but we try and sell those as much as we can, and so we'll do that, and we'll work on the architecture of that to enhance that, because obviously we're concerned with that too, because when they come in up Greenhaven, that's what they're going to see. So we want to make that as pleasant as it can be and acceptable to the buying public that's coming into that project.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I wasn't asking for porches and other additions, just a little variation of the vinyl
Well,
siding.
I think it will help if we can sell the porches. And,
If an individual owner decides to have a porch put on, that's going to give you some variation.
we sold quite a few of those in the first 67 units that we did, so we'll continue on with that.
Commissioner Levy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the applicant introduce himself and address? I didn't get that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. Which one of these is
They're both,
They're both-
the one's going already.
okay.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We're good.
Paul Donay. I'm the president of Donay Homes. This is I guess I'm into the 4th decade now of doing this, so been around for a while. And my office address is 9655 63rd Avenue North in Maple Grove, 55369.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Levy.
And then on this view that we have here, I see 4 entry doors for 5 units. Am I missing an entry door somewhere?
One's
Okay. Thank you. Sure.
Which mirrors the development across the street, correct? Okay.
Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions? Mr. Dene, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you for bringing the application in front of us. This does require a public hearing, so at this point, I will open the public hearing and ask anyone in the audience that would like to come up and speak to this issue, please come up and give us your name and your thoughts. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And Commissioners, your thoughts. Commissioner Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think this is a very straightforward application. Mr. Donnie has been doing this in our city for 4 decades. They have worked well with staff in getting all the things done, and except for deviations, I see that they have complied with all our requirements. I would just like to commend Dane Homes for building in our city and for helping our city grow. More homes, likely more population will grow, and I'm looking forward to diversity, hopefully, and I think these homes, as I see it planned, will definitely attract people to our city. So congratulations to Dane Homes, and wish them well with their plans.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Any other commissioners have any? Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see any provisions here for low-income housing. Is that dealt with citywide in other areas? I'm not familiar enough yet with what goes on in the rest of the city to know that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it is not part of this project. It is at a policy level from the City Council. It would not necessarily be something that came from the Planning Commission at this time. We do have a target and objectives that have come down from the Metropolitan Council, and our City Council looks at that, reviews it. At this point, the Burnsville Council is not mandating certain percentages or anything like that. There have been discussions in the past with target pricing and things like that, but that's not on the council's radar at this point.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments? Hearing none, I would stand for a motion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the preliminary and final plat and the planned unit development amendment for a townhome development located at 15200 Burnhaven Drive with these two conditions. Condition 1, prior to release of any permits, the applicant shall provide written confirmation that Dakota Electric has reviewed and is acceptable to the improvements proposed within their easement. And condition 2, this amendment rescinds and replaces the February 17, 2009 planned unit development approval for the memory care facility, which was planned at that time, case file number 08-36.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed say nay. And the motion carries. This will go in front of the council meeting on October 6th, and that'll actually be held right here at the Diamond Head facility, not at the council chambers. Thank you very much. Good luck. We appreciate your time. Steve, welcome back. Item 4 on our agenda this evening is a public hearing. It's an application for Soccer Blast Properties, MN, Inc. for a planned unit development amendment for the use of a fabric dome located at 3601 West 145th Street. And Commissioner Workman, I will give you the floor before we start.
And I will be abstaining from this item as I have a working relationship with the applicant.
Thank you, Commissioner Workman. I appreciate that. Mr. Slaney, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This is a public hearing. This is a planned unit development for Soccer Blast Properties. This is an amendment. You're certainly familiar with this project and the recent construction plans that occurred. Unfortunately, due to the timing of the new addition and the forthcoming Minnesota winter ahead of us, the applicant has requested to utilize a fabric dome another winter, the winter of 2015-2016, with expectations and plans to start the permanent construction with the permanent construction in the spring and have everything ready to go for the next indoor soccer season. Staff is supportive of this. We certainly want to see the addition go up. The applicant has been moving forward with construction drawings and the permit to do so. It's simply a matter of time at this point, and the applicant property owner would like to get as much out of this indoor season as possible without loss of revenue because of construction. Staff is recommending approval with the 4 conditions that are listed in your background. It is a public hearing, Mr. Chair, and the property owner is here if you have any questions, and I'll stand for questions also.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. I do have a quick question. Were some of these conditions new? I guess I don't remember the last time when we extended this.
These are a mimic of the last extension, and I'm trying to think, that was, I believe, 2012.
So the 180 days and then the expiration date and where the material was stored was all in there?
I apologize. Number 2, the second one, the expiration of 2016 is new to this. There was I believe, the last expiration would have been 2015.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Slaney? None? Mr. Benke, you have the floor.
Just to confirm, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that the May 1st expiration date is acceptable to the applicant.
I'll have her come up and we'll confirm that question.
That'd be
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Well, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would assume that this is the same dome that they've been using?
Correct.
Okay.
Same exact structure, same fabric dome.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Slaney? At this point, I'd like to invite the applicant up, and we'll ask Commissioner Benke's question.
Tanis Carter is here with soccer.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. Please give us your name and your address again for the record. I appreciate it.
Good evening. I'm Tanis Carter, 18275 Kingsway Path in Lakeville, Minnesota.
We'll start with Commissioner Benke's question. Are you okay with the end date of May 1st? Was that negotiated?
Historically, the dome comes down the first week of May, and so if you have a hard date of May 1st, we may want to extend that into May 7th. So I don't know how.
Staff can make that adjustment.
Okay.
I remember as a football parent that the football team comes and helps because
Yes.
they get to use it during the winter.
Yes.
And I remembered it was in that time frame, but not exactly when.
It always depends on the weather.
Sure.
If it's sunny and not windy and rainy, we really try to take it down, because if you take it down and it rains a lot on it, it's very, very heavy to roll up. So we never want to take it down when it rains. So if May 1st is cloudy and thunderstorming and it's raining, we will not take it down.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This now eliminates, in the eventual plan also eliminates any outdoor soccer. Is that correct? Because now with the dome down, you'd have soccer during the summer outdoors. So just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, if the permanent building goes up is what we're planning on doing in May of 2016, you're correct, there will be no outdoor turf. But just to let you know, we really haven't used the outdoor turf for 2 summers. People really prefer to play on grass and not hot turf in the summer.
I understand that.
It's kind
Thank
of
you.
what it is.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Okay. Hearing none, I'll move on. This does require a public hearing, so at this point, I will open the public hearing and ask anyone in the audience to come up that could give us some guidance or thoughts. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, you have the floor. Thoughts? I would.
Clearly, she needs to use it for the winter. And
Yes.
definitely in support of it.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I could not imagine trying to build that other building
No.
now and have it available for winter use.
Yeah. I think this is a very reasonable.
Absolutely.
I would be in support of this. So I would stand for a motion.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Benke that
To recommend the city council approval of the planned unit development amendment for use of the Fabric Dome located at 3601 145th Street West with the following 4 conditions as listed by staff. I paused because I did see a couple of date differences between the screen and the actual recommendation, so I am going by the staff report here. And with the also changing the May 1st, 2016 expiration date to the end of the first week of May, whatever date that would be, and I would presume that would be the Sunday of the weekend, so that if they have the footballers come and helping, it'll be a Saturday thing. So
Staff can make that adjustment. I apologize. I will correct the dates that are reflected in the staff report versus the PowerPoint.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Singh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. This also will go in front of the City Council on October 6th here at the Diamond Head facility.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank
Good
you.
luck this winter.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 5 on our agenda this evening. This is also a public hearing for the City of Burnsville ordinance amendments to Title 10, zoning chapters 7 and 22, 22A, 22A1, 26, 26A, 26B of the Burnsville City Code regarding temporary storage of new vehicle inventory for auto dealerships at existing parking lots. Mr. Slania, once again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This has been in the works behind the scenes all summer, even generated this spring at a staff level. As many of you have probably experienced and noticed throughout the community, the new car dealerships are oftentimes overloaded with inventory, and they are seeking out existing parking lots, whether it be shopping centers or office buildings or other unutilized parking lots for storage. This is not allowed by ordinance. It becomes an enforcement issue and very time-consuming from a staff level. Not only does it involve city staff, the dealerships, but then we're also getting the property owners involved as they are the responsible entity for the parking lot, whatever parking lot's being used. Staff approached the City Council at their work session in July seeking some direction. Staff is looking for an administrative process that would allow a permit to be issued to the dealerships for temporary storage. We are not necessarily limiting the number of vehicles to be stored, and I'll get to some of these details in a minute, but the utilization of existing parking lots for parking of new vehicles. Council was supportive of it. They directed staff to go through the amendment process, work out some of the details, check in with the Planning Commission for public hearing. Some of the key points the council was seeking was an administrative process. This is by nature temporary. Some of the directions specifically from the council would be that this be for new vehicles as well as for dealerships that exist within the boundaries of Burnsville, rather than Burnsville becoming the storage area for other dealerships in the South Metro. Council also requested that this be in effect for approximately a year, allow the dealerships and the property owners to utilize this, and then bring it back to the council and possibly the Planning Commission for review. They're digging through some of the details of this ordinance that was included in your packet. The proposal would include this as an accessory use in the B3 district, the B4 district. Both of those are business, general business and highway business. The commercial recreation district, which is currently Buck Hill, falls in that. And then the I3, GIM, and GIH district. Those are our industrial districts, understanding that there are properties around town, larger industrial sites that may be underutilized for their parking, more office, or excuse me, less office than warehouse use, and the ability to use this existing hard surface rather than imposing additional costs and additional hard surface throughout the community for car dealerships, which in the end hopefully are just on a temporary need and not necessarily year-round. From a staff perspective, if dealerships are storing these vehicles in a year-round fashion, they need to be looking at a permanent facility or a more permanent solution than what this offers. As outlined in front of you, each permit would be valid for up to 6 months. They're not obligated to use it for 6 months, but it's certainly valid, and one dealership entity would, each dealership entity would be allowed one for 12 months. And I want to touch on the dealership and the entity. So in this situation, both Luther and Walser have multiple dealerships in our community. Each dealerships, so Walser Nissan and Walser Mazda, would each get one. It would not fall under the Walser group getting one permit. We discussed the new vehicles only. We're also not looking for business to be conducted at these off-site locations. So anybody looking to buy a car, lease a car, needs to go to the dealership. I'm sure there will be window shoppers that are driving through these parking lots, checking them out, and that may not be an issue at all. We specifically call no signage, no fencing or barriers. Again, we want these on existing parking lots. We're not looking for the dealership or property owner to invest time or money into improving these sites. We want them to be able to use them as is. And again, no structures on the site. Certainly there may be unexpected issues that arise from this. As I mentioned, if people are window shopping in these parking lots, that may drive a lot of traffic that we're not expecting. Staff doesn't see that as a problem, but any unintended consequences, the Planning Commission and Council can address that. We're looking at trying this out for a year, and hopefully we have a valid solution. With that, Commissioners, the language was included in your packet. You'll notice the first page and page and a half, there was no underlined language because essentially that is a new section. Section 10750 is brand new. So all of that language would have been underlined, and I wanted to spare you from reading through all that on a busy page. Staff is recommending approval as presented. Certainly if there are questions or concerns, this is a city application, so we are on our own time frame. If the Planning Commission would like to revisit this, we can certainly do that before moving on to the council.
Thank you, Chris. Just a couple of quick questions. I'm under the assumption the majority of this was taking place in and around Burnsville Center. Do we have other parts of the city where besides Buck Hill and Burnsville Center, are there other parts of the city that staff believes this is going to be utilized?
Not currently, but there are some larger parking lots on the north end of town in the MRQ. That is what falls into the GIM and GIH. The Lady Bird Lane area, although there was recently a permanent site approved for that. Yellow Freight and I cannot think of the other parcel we had in mind, but there was some large hard surface parking lots up there that we thought could be utilized.
So just for clarification, the Walzer lot that was approved is exempt from this because was a PUD.
PUD and intended for permanent year-round.
And then the storage that Park Jeep has is on their property, so that would be also exempt, correct?
That is exempt. That is a separate issue we're pursuing with Park Jeep, but correct, that would not fall under this category.
And then just one quick, when you get to the end of the ordinance, you've got F, G, and then I, and then...
Yes, I do.
And then at the end of I, it talks about the termination of the permit, and then is that the way the ordinance will read?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I will correct the lettering, but unless the Planning Commission or Council has questions, that's the language we're proposing for that. And then the date of the final approval.
Okay.
Is inserted in those blanks.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Slania? Mr. Thomas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing that I like this looks like it'll work out really well. Any feedback on the duration requirements, 1 per 6 months from the local businesses?
Certainly. When this started, we had some, we had some conversations with the dealerships, and what really started driving this was the impact that at the end of each fiscal year, the manufacturers are trying to get this year's model, for example, the 2015s, away from their manufacturing plants out to the dealerships so they have room to start storing the 2016s or the next year's models. That is typically beginning in October into November and peaks around the first of the year. That is, unfortunately, the exact time where car sales drop for the year around the winter months. So the direction or the suggestions we were given was if it would encompass November, December, January, and February, that'd be very helpful. Well, for whatever reason, I believe a lot of it is the construction that's happening around town, but we've noticed those new cars are sitting in parking lots through the summer rather, and then maybe they'll be back this winter, but they were certainly there this summer. So we wanted to be as broad as we could and say, okay, you've got 6 months throughout the year, although it needs to be taken in one chunk, you figure out the best way to utilize it. We got into 6 months per calendar year, but then we were running into the winter where the dealerships were looking for help in December and then again in January. So staff tried to simplify it the best we could and give them as much flexibility as we reasonably could.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more question. Other than an enforcement issue, we really haven't got any ongoing problems with dealerships parking in.
We don't. From what I've heard, it works out very well for each party involved. Not to pick on them, but Burnsville Center has a lot of parking in the middle of the summer, and they can bring in some revenue through this. Same with Buck Hill. They've got the hard surface to utilize. The dealerships are looking for space. Really, I think it comes down to an aesthetic issue and how the city wants to deal with that.
Commissioner Benke.
To expand on Commissioner, the previous question here, it would seem that Burnsville Center and Buck Hill would both have little ability to provide the service during their peak times, which sounds like it's the peak time when it's needed, basically winter, for both of them, between Christmas shopping and skiing. Has that factored into any of this at all?
It has, Commissioners, and that's why we expanded the use to other districts that could encompass other sites besides Buck Hill and Burnsville Center.
Sure. Has there been any feedback from, for example, the Subaru dealership who just purchased their own lot to store on? I mean, have they felt like they're being treated differently because these guys can come and basically rent space?
No, Commissioners. This was I had a specific conversation with Walzer, and this was looked very favorably upon even after and during their planning for that parking lot.
So if Walzer Subaru has their own lot and Walzer Toyota has their lot, they don't put any other makes on those lots?
If I can, Commissioners, what I took from the storage site going in on Lady Bird Lane is it's intended for Subaru, but it's likely other brands could be parked there over the course of the year.
Within Walzer's ownership?
Within Walzer's ownership, correct.
Well,
Correct.
Well, I do see the benefit to not creating additional parking. I do see the benefit to not creating additional impervious surface and to minimize the heat island that we already have. So I think that's great. So what about for security? I mean, we're not allowing them to fence. We're not allowing them to do anything else. Are they providing cameras? Are they providing their own security? Has that been a problem from the police department standpoint?
There are security issues. You'll hear that from the dealerships. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I can say this is not the ideal setup from their standpoint. As you said, security and just general monitoring, the staff, the labor it takes in the organization to move 50 or 100 cars back and forth to certain locations, that is not what the dealerships want to do.
Sure.
They want it on their property, they want their security in place, but as I discussed, they don't always have an option, and they weigh the pros and cons of that, and oftentimes the security takes a backseat to the ability to just get the cars somewhere else.
Sure. Well, and clearly being in the middle of the parking lot in Burnsville Center is not a bad thing.
Right, right.
And presumably there's some security at Buck Hill where it's screened better. Clearly, if they were to use something like Yellow Freight, that's a fenced site. Mm-hmm. And they're obviously going to use their own judgment to pick a good spot for their product.
Correct. If I can get into Commissioner Thomas's point, I missed this point. Many of you may know this, but also the dealerships are often required to take a certain number of cars from the manufacturer. So this isn't necessarily by their choice or based on how much inventory they have available. It's based off a calculation, and they're going to get these cars from the manufacturing plant whether they like it or not, which also differentiates them between a new car dealership and a used car dealership that may have more control over their space and their inventory and so forth.
Thank you.
Commissioner Benke. Thank you. Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the security, have there been any issues? I know there's a lot of cars parked at Burnsville Center. Have there been any police calls associated with that parking there that you're aware of?
Commissioners, I don't know. There are not substantial issues. I can tell you the dealerships say they do run into problems, but I don't know that it's a heavy influx of calls.
Commissioner Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, I support the plan to have these new cars parked in the lots. And as you explained a little while ago, whether the dealership like it or not, they get an allotment of vehicles each year. Unless I miss it, I don't see any direction for loading, for unloading. I worry that, especially with the holidays coming up, you don't want a trailer of cars coming and unloading on the street. I think the direction should be given, unloading should be done in the lot. I don't think you will have loading, unloading will be the problem.
Commissioners, just if I can, to get some direction, is that when you're saying in the lot, to ensure that it happens on private property and not in the street?
But I'm worried about doing the unloading on the street.
Yep, okay. That is covered in another section of the ordinance. I guess I raise the question, are you comfortable with unloading happening at Burnsville Center versus the initial unloading at the dealership and then shuttling them over to the other site?
I would defer to staff on that. What the situation is more than I do. All I'm concerned about is that don't unload in a busy street.
Certainly. Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Binky.
Chris, I guess that is I saw under performance standards E1, you had off-street parking and loading areas comply with general parking requirements within the section.
E1?
Correct. But I guess that does bring up, are they unloading at, we're picking on it, but Burnsville Center's parking lot?
Commissioners, I don't know.
Would that be allowed under this permit, or would we require them to unload at their dealership and then shuttle them over and then shuttle them back?
Unless, Commissioners, unless we specifically add it to our criteria list, it would be permitted to unload at Burnsville Center or at Buck Hill.
Commissioners, I have seen them unload at Burnsville Center off the carrier, so I guess I wouldn't recommend telling the dealerships to unload at their franchise and then drive them. I think whatever is best for the dealer and the closest to would be.
As a discussion item, I agree. I think that's good. I think that some of these lots may not have the space that Burnsville Center enjoys, and Burnsville Center may not have the space at certain times of the year. And then, so I guess, perhaps, to avoid the kind of conflict that came up with Walser Subaru on that street adjacent to their property, perhaps a little bit more direction about where loading and unloading is acceptable would be a good thing to add here.
Commissioner, staff can take another look at, I don't know all the provisions in that 10.7.26 that talks about unloading on the street and other things. Let me take a look at that, and if need be,
see if it's defensible.
Correct.
Commissioner Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm concerned about the weight of a car carrier on a private driveway, a private parking lot. Are they constructed to handle that kind of concentrated weight? I know they're for cars, but
Commissioner Levy, I would say that that's probably due to the property owner that's going to allow somebody to park the cars under. That wouldn't be under our jurisdiction as to for how the private property would be used.
okay.
Commissioner Workman.
I don't want to keep beating you with ordinance, Chris, but I have a quick question regarding if a new lot pops up somewhere. Is there a notification process for neighboring businesses or an opportunity for somebody to maybe learn more about what's about to happen before it happens? Just to avoid future conflict.
In this scenario, or just a general new parking lot?
If one of these lots was to not be at Burnsville Center or Buck Hill and all of a sudden somewhere else, and Wendy's doesn't like it, is there a process for them to explain their grievance with something if they maybe don't want to see that?
Certainly. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, under the current language, it would It would not involve a public hearing or anything like that. It would be come in, get a permit straight from staff at City Hall, and the dealership could use the lot. If a neighboring business had a concern with that, we can certainly walk through the criteria, make sure the dealership is following these rules, and then I would say if there continues to be concern or anything like that, that's when they would voice their concern to the council and or the planning commission. And if it's within this first year, and then the city has the ability to tweak it and adjust it.
Okay, thank you.
And just, I want to make sure one knows, the duration, C4, the duration of permit issues under this section shall provide for a valid for 6 months. No more than one permit shall be issued per 12-month period. So it's not like they can come back and apply for a second permit in that 12-month period.
True, but with
Dealership.
limited number of dealerships, Walzer, I can't remember all the names over there, Volkswagen and whoever else is, what other brand, they could utilize a lot within the overall umbrella continually.
According to Chris's statement, Luther Hyundai would apply for 6 months, and then Luther Volkswagen could apply for 6 months.
Correct.
So they could utilize a 12-month piece for that.
Which is fine.
I guess my point to Commissioner Workman is that period then gets us to the 1-year review at the city council. So specifically, I would think staff is real good at that point of bringing up, here's been the issues that have surfaced during that, and we've got a 1-year snapshot look, and then certainly can make some changes after that. Commissioner Levy.
Thank you. And there's no limit to the number of cars per permit? So
That's a great question, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. That was a discussion staff had. We felt that was a business decision by the property owner and the dealership. Whether we like it or not, this model's been in place for years now. They seem to be working it out on their own. Otherwise, obviously, Burnsville Center and Buck Hill wouldn't be doing it. So we did discuss, well, should we put a specific number in there? And again, that gets to an enforcement issue from city staff. And we may pick a number that's completely off from what reality needs to be.
That's true.
Commissioner Benke.
I mean, we're limited by the number of parking spaces in a lot. And clearly, if they're using the lot for other purposes, they're going to want to keep some open. Mm-hmm. So I think we're putting it back on the businesses to decide what they can accept, which makes sense.
And at Burnsville Center, personally, in the middle of the winter, when the mall was the busiest, there was still cars parked there, and there was still empty spots. So I think we're good at this point, at least for that lot.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions of staff and the commissioners? Seeing or hearing none, I will open the public hearing and invite anybody in the audience that would like to come up and give us their thoughts. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And at this point, commissioners, I would entertain a motion or additional thoughts.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Singh.
I beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the proposed ordinance amendments as presented by staff.
Moved by Commissioner Singh. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Benke. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay, and the motion carries. That brings us to number 6 on our agenda this evening, and the October 12th Planning Commission meeting has been canceled. Our services are no longer needed for that evening. And does anybody have any other updates for us?
Not an update, Mr. Chair, but if I get my information correctly, this may be the last meeting that Mr. Slania is with us as the planner presenting these applications. You know, as the longest-serving commissioner here, I've had the privilege of working with Mr. Slania for over 6 years, and I've said before, I've found him to be an asset to our Planning Commission. He does the heavy lifting, and they do such a great job that they make our work on the commission easier. He takes his job very seriously, and he is very good at what he does, not only in the preparation of the background information, but the presentation. Some of us become new, and he mentors us. I would like to use that term. He mentors us to be good commissioners, and personally I want to thank him and to wish him well. I know he's not leaving the city. He's just taking on other responsibilities, and I'm positive that he will be successful in with his new responsibilities. So, Chris, thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. I would echo those comments. Thank you very much. You've been great to work with, as I started on the Planning Commission also. And I wish you luck in your non-evening job, and congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Let everybody speak at once. Commissioner Benke has moved, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Workman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you, and have a good evening. I appreciate your time.